So AI deployment in organizations. I'm Pierre Bosquet. I'm in charge of the AI program at PwC France and Maghreb. And with me, Pierre-Edouard.
So, hi everyone. My name is Pierre-Edouard. You can call me PE. I'm in charge of customer success for OpenAI France. And maybe Anais, do you want to...
Yeah, I'm Anais Pierre. I'm a director within the workforce practice, PwC, based in Paris. And maybe you may have some food thought already around GenAI and productivity.
Yes, so maybe just to kickstart, one thing that we've seen across multiple deployment of GenAI globally at OpenAI is revolving around 3 pillars. And so the first pillar is what we call accessibility. So how do you give access to tools like ChatGPT, GenAI tools, to your employees? The second thing that we've seen is governance. You need a strong governance in place to have ownership around these deployments and monitoring usage and value. And so the third strategic pillar is the value. How do you map the value onto your business processes so you create a return on investment when you invest in such tools?
No, and it's already a really good point, but maybe I would like to start from the beginning, because when we are talking with our clients, we have 2 types of clients. The first one, they are like, okay, GenAI, but it's like the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. They are going to destroy everything. They are going to destroy all the jobs. This is on one hand. And on the other hand, we have those that are like, yeah, but it's a huge opportunity for us. We can save up to approximately $16 trillion by 2030. So that's why we are really now in the middle, and we have to think about GenAI. In fact, GenAI is just a tool. It's just technology. And if we want to think about productivity, savings, the only way to do so is really to integrate GenAI in our ways of working. And I think this is the key point I would like to address all along this talk.
So let me ask you this question then, Anais. How to properly deploy AI and GenAI tools in organizations?
It's a good question, and it's the question from all our clients. Some figures maybe just to start. In our last CEO survey, the CEO shared that only 32% of them think that GenAI is pretty well embedded in their processes, ways of working, and so on. 32%. It's not really high. And that's why it's really key to understand that we still have a wide gap between adoption and having true daily productivity. And how to get this true daily productivity is really to embed GenAI in your ways of working. In a real GenAI, I would say, adoption, you need 2 things. The adoption program in itself, trainings and so on, but also all the transformation related to processes to make sure that GenAI will be properly used. And maybe I can share our example within PwC, because for nearly 2 years, we are deploying a huge program with a scale investment to make sure that our own consultants are ready to use GenAI. We have approximately 300 super users that are supporting the company, so 700 approximately employees within PwC France and Maghreb, and they're really there to support us. So key figures about this transformation, we are quite proud, saying that 90% of our employees have adopted GenAI. But saying that, we have only 26% of them that have been able to embed GenAI in their day-to-day activities, which is really a big gap, and that's the key topic that we have to address.
On our side, what we're seeing when we're usually doing a deployment, so usually we start with what we call self-serve. So we provide a numerous number of resources for employees to train mainly on how to use ChatGPT. First thing would be, how do you do prompt engineering? How do you discuss with a tool like ChatGPT to gain value and extract value from a conversation? And then a second layer would be, how do you actually build GPT, so those smart assistants to help you on your day-to-day task and automatize some processes. That's the first layer. The second thing is we're going to also deliver some ad hoc sessions to make sure that you get trained and you maybe start to build like a library of use cases and try to map those use cases against some value processes I was mentioning before. And responding to Anais, I think she's right. Where we want to see the value is where we embed AI into your processes, into your tools. And this is why we just developed very recently what we call connectors to allow you to connect ChatGPT onto your daily workflow, daily processes, and daily tools. And I think that is the main value we're trying to get. The first layer of use cases we usually see when we start, working with an enterprise is usually around, content summarization, content generation, coding, copilot, reconciliation of data. And so this is where we want to help you and help those companies we're working with to extract value by helping them unlock those connectors in their daily tasks.
Bon, ChatGPT, everybody knows it. It rocked the world over the last 2 years and a half almost. That's on the consumer part. But what about the enterprise part of your business? What is the typical adoption rate, and what are the best practices to improve the adoption of such a tool in the enterprise environment?
So there's two things we're usually monitoring when we launch an engagement with a customer. The first thing is what we call license activation. So we're buying X number of license. What is the percentage of license that you have activated after 90 days? What we see on the market is usually after a quarter, so 3 months, we have around 90 to 100% activation. So I think it's great because this shows the interest of the employees into getting access to those tools. And then the second thing we're looking at is what we call the weekly active usage. And so globally, what we see is around 85% of weekly active usage, which I think is great because it shows that a lot of employees are using those tools every week in order to fast track their work. I had another, actually one of my customers did something very smart. We cannot do it, but they compared the number of messages that their employees send through ChatGPT versus the number of emails they write and versus the number of messages they send in Teams. And so what we saw after 6 months is that ChatGPT is actually on par with the number of messages you send across Teams and before email. So it's interesting because it shows that ChatGPT is kind of this colleague you write to every day in order to help you fast track some work. Onto the best practices, usually what we do is we try to build what we call a champion network. So, back to the ownership and the governance, we need to have champions in different business teams that are on the field, that understand the bottlenecks, the challenges that we need to unlock with GenAI tools, and also to source those use cases that bring value. On the challenges, I would say that the main challenge is AI skepticism. AI is going to replace my job, is going to replace me. And I think this is where we're trying to unlock the value is we don't want you to do more work. We want you to do more quality work. So that's what we're trying to push. To give you a concrete example, I'm an engagement manager. My value is spending time with customers and not necessarily writing emails, building decks, etc. So if I can have some tools that fast track me on those admin tasks so I can spend more time with my customers, then my value as an individual within the company is greater than before. And I think this is what we're trying to work with our customers to achieve at some point is how do we do more quality work over time.
And I like this idea indeed, and this is what we are trying to do within PwC with our transformation program. But on top of that, and not because we are just regulatory, also under regulatory environment, but what we think is really to have a kind of compliance training, if I can use this word. It's a key one, because we need to understand how to use in a safe environment GenAI. That's really the key point. Because coming back to our clients, we had a discussion with the CEO few weeks, months ago with Pierre, and he was like, no, but it's okay for the strategy. I tried with ChatGPT. The strategy of your company via ChatGPT with a public account? Whoa. Yeah, so maybe we take a step back and we can discuss this a bit. And a lot of employees, because the company is a little bit behind, are already using ChatGPT, GenAI, whatever the solution they are using on their day-to-day activities, but without any control, without any security. And that's why for us within PwC, it's key for us as an enterprise, but also for our clients to make sure that they will have this first layer, if I may say, as a compliance training. The second one is really to understand what brings GenAI, because we still have those people that are thinking it's a kind of poudre de perlimpinpin and they can do everything with GenAI. which is not true. And we have to be fair with this one. We can't do anything with Gen AI. But it's really the way you are thinking about Gen AI, how to use Gen AI, and how Gen AI can support you in administrative tasks and so on. That's the key point. And that's why we have, on top of theory, some hands-on trainings just to highlight and to show the most important use cases as a baseline to start using Gen AI. And with these two trainings, then if you pass the trainings and you have your official stamp from PwC, you can get your access. This is what we put in place, and I think it's really a key driver for the transformation, to make sure that people understand what is Gen AI, what they can do, what they can't do with Gen AI, how to use it, and to make sure that they have a safe environment to do so.
Okay. So after all the employees have adopted, or 90% of them, 90 plus, those tools, how can that translate into real money at the bank for the company? What about the productivity side of the topic? And you may have also some discussion about agentic as the ultimate stage to save time and automatize the work.
Yeah, so it's a great question. And so usually when we launch an engagement with our customers, after 3 months, we launch what we do, impact value survey that we run on a quarterly basis with our customers. The idea of those impact value surveys is to understand the value of ChatGPT within the enterprise. There's 3 figures that we usually try to monitor. The first thing is that what is the time that you save every week? What we see from our survey globally is that 90% of the employees say that they save time every week. Close to 90% of those employees say that they increase their productivity. But what's interesting is that 70% of them say that it's increasing their innovation as well as their creativity. And I think this is where it gets back to the quality work I was mentioning earlier, is that we want you to be enabled to do more interesting work in your daily life and delegate the admin tasks that are low added value to tools like ChatGPT or Gen AI. The teams where we see most value today, usually when we start, is around HR, finance, obviously R&D with a coding assistant. But if you step back, usually an implementation phase is threefold. The first thing is accessibility. I was mentioning you give access to your employees to ChatGPT. They start to use it. They start to understand, as Anais said, what they can do, what they cannot do. The second step is they start to understand, oh, I can now build this GPT, this smart assistant to help me fast track this specific task that I'm doing every day or every week, every quarter, every month. And then the third layer, and this is where it gets interesting, is that employees that are on the field start to understand how they can potentially join GPTs all together in order to AI a full process, and this is where there's tremendous value. And so this third layer usually takes between 6 months to 1 or number of years, and this is where it gets interesting because usually this is where you use our APIs in order to completely AI the full process. And just to give you a quick example of one of the use case I love, we're working with Grab. I don't know if all of you know Grab. It's the Uber of Southeast Asia. And they had some challenges doing some deliveries in Indonesia because roads get disconstructed every single day, and so Google Maps is not up to date. And so one of the engineers raised their hand and said, but we have the cameras on the cars and the motorcycles, so we could rebuild all of the roads ourselves. And so they fine-tuned one of our models in order to recognize the sign roads and rebuild everything on their own. And now they gain 20% to 30% efficiency in delivery. That's pure additional business. And so our ambition is how do we help you through those 3 phases to reach those use cases that are going to transform your business and bring tons of added value. But usually you need to start with phase 1 and phase 2.
Yeah, indeed, you're absolutely right. Well, when we talk about adoption and impact on productivity, people think that, okay, with all the trainings that we have, it will be fine. But in fact, with a change program or training program that you can deploy, yes, you will reach a kind of 80-90% of adoption rate, which is quite good. But it doesn't mean that it's fully embedded within your organization. And the key point is how to make the link, how to connect the dots between using Gen AI and having at the end real savings or a gain of productivity. And that's the key point, because Gen AI is just a tool. So with Gen AI, you are saving times, you are gaining minutes. That's it. And then it's really the key question is what to do with this time that I'm saving thanks to Gen AI. And the second one, and for me maybe the most important one related to your last use case, that's amazing one, is really what type of minutes I'm going to gain with Gen AI. And for me, that's the difference between gaining 10 minutes or saving 10 minutes writing an email with Gen AI with, I don't know, as a consultant, using Gen AI to automate some Excel spreadsheet with VBA and so on, because it's a key stuff. I don't like that, but then it's a real game changer for the team to do the impact assessment, to do some data crunching and so on. And that's the trigger, to find the right balance between the standard use cases that you need on kind of administrative stuff, work office stuff and so on, and the one that are going to change your job, your delivery, and to get a real impact. And to do so, it's not only having training, identifying the right use cases, but it's also related to the mindset shifts. Because you need new skills. You have to develop new skills to be sure to be ready to tackle the changes brought by the Gen AI.
Okay, so we are going to move to the Q&A part of the discussion. We'll have additional 15 minutes. So if one of you want to ask a question, let me ask though the first question. Because somebody is going to ask it anyway. What about the data confidentiality with OpenAI, specifically on ChatGPT? The word has spread that at least on the consumer side of your business, whatever you tell to ChatGPT will be used to train your own model. What is it about enterprise?
Yeah, so two things. Whatever accounts you have, being free, plus, pro, or teams, you can always uncheck the data training. You have access to this. You don't have to pay. You can just create an account and say, I do want my data to be used to train the models. That's the first thing. Actually, when you get onto teams or education or enterprise, we do not train on any data. You cannot even activate it for us to train. That's not possible. We actually went even further, and every time you use a corporate email address, we do not train on the data, okay? For every European customers, so every European-owned customer, mainland and Ireland, all of the data is hosted in Europe, and so you're under GDPR. Maybe some of you actually have seen, but when you are in EU and you have a ChatGPT account, there's actually a delay when you get access to the features because we need to respect GDPR, and so it usually takes 2 or 3 weeks for us to make this happen. So no training on your data, you own your data. We give you access to some tools like the compliance API to understand what's happening within your organization. And again, it's not possible for us to use this data and you're protected against GDPR.
If I may, Pierre, because thank you. I agree with you, Pierre-Edouard, and I think it's good that the technology is already adapting to the wish of the employees and of the market. Because this is something that we can easily understand when talking with some employees, but also with all the surveys that we are doing and with the last Ops and Fields, for example, 85% of the employees would select a company with a responsible AI strategy instead of another one. So that's a key point. So when we are talking about recruitment, how to attract talent, this AI responsibility topic is a key one. And it's really good to have OpenAI and other big company working on this one to make sure that our data are secure and we can use the tool properly or the technology properly.
Okay, so this is it for the formal part of the discussion. I open the floor to the questions. Please.
Hi, Karen Achter, Randstad Digital.
Can you quickly present yourself?
Yes,
in a way?
I'm HR responsible for Randstad Digital Belgium and Luxembourg. I have a question. I followed a course last week, a seminar, and the insights were that apparently ChatGPT, Gemini, and tools like that are being used less by women than by men. Less by women than by men. Is that something that you see? Do you have these insights?
I don't have those insights, but that would surprise me, to be honest.
Yeah.
Sorry, no data on this.
No, and on the field standpoint, if I may say, a lot of women are using GenAI. I'm using GenAI on a daily basis.
I was also
we have
surprised.
super users that women, and our strong, I would say, super user within PwC are women, and they are really good. So, yeah, I know. So, but maybe it's also related to technology, if I may say, because we still have a gap between men and women when it's related to technology. So, could be indeed an answer. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Another question? Okay, let me go for one of the questions. What difference do you see between the US, the UK, and France, for instance, or Europe in general, or other, let's say, emerging countries?
So lots of differences. I would say the main difference that we see is that currently US companies are willing to make huge bets on GenAI. When I'm saying huge bets, they really think about investing. I'm talking dozens of millions of dollars within the organization in order to transform their whole organization to be AI ready, AI enabled. We tend to see in Europe a bit more skepticism. I think that's usually our case. We're a bit more cautious. There's a bit more regulation in EU. And what's funny is that what we're starting to see is, especially in France, that usually SBF 120 is actually a bit more advanced than CAC 40, weird enough. They want to move a bit faster. And then there's some regional specificities. Germany is moving really, really fast. I think it's our second biggest market in the world after the US, even before the UK, which I think is interesting. So I think those would be the main difference. I think most of the discussions we have in EU are around regulation, safety, GDPR. I'd say there's a real fear in the US for some key players to be completely disrupted. And so they're willing to move really fast in order to keep their edge compared to the competition, which is something we don't see that much in EU. I think that's the main difference.
Okay. Please use the mic.
I wonder, have you encountered any resistance among your clients when it comes to adopting GenAI, especially from the creative department?
Not that much, to be honest. We're working with some luxury brands where it fast-tracks all of their marketing and branding departments. It helps them build campaigns, visuals, and to be honest, not that much. I think there's more a question of, is it going to replace me? And when they get their hands on the tools, they see all the potential and the things that they can do. It was actually funny, a month and a half ago, I did a demo with one of our customers, and we fast-tracked a marketing campaign that was supposed to be done in a month in less than a few hours. So I think it's just enabling their team to do more stuff. So I would say not that much resistance. Usually what you see happening is more, some people would be careful before using the tool, and then you have one person in the team that is starting to do tons of work, and then the whole team start to mimic what this employee is doing because they're going much faster. So that's usually what we're seeing across the board.
Yeah, if I may, it's a kind of leading by example. Few months ago, my answer would have been different because indeed they were like, it's going to destroy our job or replace us. The question now is not to replace, but how to use properly and to find the right balance between human in the loop, having a human working with GenAI, and the activities that are delegated to GenAI in itself. And that's the quick question. Now we have a lot of use cases and a lot of big companies, especially on this domain, that are doing amazing things with GenAI. So it's easier. When you are the early birds, not easy. I agree with you, and this is something that we have to discuss with our clients, explain the benefits, how to use these, how to manage the deceptive effect or the wow effect that is related to GenAI. But now with concrete example, with big, I would say, marketing names or big beauty industry clients, it's easier to engage the discussion and to explain. You will always have, whatever the topic, some people that are against the project, against the transformation. This is, I would say, part of the transformation in itself, and especially in France, because it's part of our DNA. But saying that, if you can prove with concrete example, and do not start with a big one, start with simple one with a good ROI, quite short time to implement, you will be able to gain their trust.
You need to make.
Just quick follow-up, because you did mention a very good point about the worry about whether or not being replaced. But I wonder, especially for the creative department, what about the originality of the content? Some of them, because I was on another session talking about that, using Gen AI compared to the traditional, conventional way of creating content, the infringement of copyright and all that.
I think we mentioned it earlier, but you're not just going to ask something to ChatGPT and then use the output as the final thing. I think it's more, how do you have a human in the loop where you co-work with ChatGPT in order to build something, because you stay the expert in your field, and so you're going to steer the direction with ChatGPT as your co-worker. And to get back to the example of the marketing campaign that we did with this luxury brand in France. What we did is that we just generated 50 campaign in just a full day, where it would have taken you maybe a multiple number of weeks. But the idea is let's build a new bottle of perfume for this segment, let's say the 15 to 20 years old that are on TikTok. Okay, how do we address this segment? How do we build a marketing campaign on this? What are the channels in order to deliver this new bottle, etc.? And so what used to take you maybe multiple number of days or even weeks or even months, now you can do it at scale, and so you can actually do more campaign, more work. And I think this is where, again, we're trying to unlock the value there.
Yeah, last point, and because we can talk a lot on this one, but it's really how to use Gen AI. And within PwC, we have two ways of seeing Gen AI. The first one as a sparring partner, so to challenge ourselves. Because when you want to set up a brainstorming, sometimes you don't have the bandwidth, you don't have a lot of people to be there to work with you on this one, and so use it as a sparring partner, so to challenge. But it's a tool, so you have to feed the tool, so you have to give him the tool some data. And the second point is, in some cases, depending on your level of seniority, but I'm seeing them as a kind of junior consultant, an intern that I can there to support me, and I can work with him. And sometimes I have questions. I am asking questions because I was working on some specific slides for a steerco for a client, and I was like, okay, this is what I would like to achieve. That's my objectives, but I don't know how to do it. Could you please help me to twist a bit, to have the right title, the right content, to make sure that I can catch them with the content. But the content is coming from me, so.
And I understand we had the last question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the insightful discussion. I come from HEC Paris, the MBA, and my question is from a recruitment perspective, in the sense that, from what I understand these days, the expectations of AI usage from seasoned professionals has transitioned from familiarity to types of expertise in how to manipulate the tools for work purposes. And I would love to understand where PwC and OpenAI's expectations lie at this moment, and how candidates may have surpassed expectations in how we can use AI tools to perform in different roles. And specifically, I would also love to understand a bit more how in PwC consultancy your consultants might leverage the use of AI. I know you just mentioned an example, but I would love a better understanding on how they use it across the board, and which tasks specifically they might leverage it a bit more.
So I think you have to start, yeah.
So education is one of our, maybe even the first segment we're working with in France. Sadly, we're not working yet with HEC, but so we started actually working with the SCP 6 months ago, where we delivered 10,500 licenses to all of their staff, professors, and students. And that's one of our key elements today, is how do we empower students to be ready for tomorrow's job. And at OpenAI, obviously, we expect people to use tools like ChatGPT. I'm using it daily. How does it fast track you in your daily job? And we discussed about it, is how do we move from a knowledge paradigm into a competency skilled paradigm, And that's an ongoing work. We sign with numerous number of schools in Europe, in the US, and that's still something we're trying to unlock. How do we work with the professors to make sure that it becomes part of the process to be a student, to be a teacher, and how do we change the learning paradigm? It's still a work in progress, but obviously we would expect people to know how to use those tools, because we do think that's our belief that it will be a day-to-day tool that you're using in the next few days, weeks, months.
I'm using GenAI on a daily basis, so yeah, for sure. So just quick examples: translation, that's the first one. When we have to do some data crunching, for sure, because I'm not a data girl, so that's why it's really helpful. Then, for example, impact analysis and so on. So just to get a first level, and then we can build on that. And this is a discussion we have with our consultants, is how to use, because I'm not so young, so I know the former methodology. So I was able to do it without GenAI. But our new consultants, they are GenAI native, and they are already using GenAI, and they are like, yeah, but okay, I will do it. You tell me that I have to challenge the data coming from GenAI, but how to do so, because I have nothing to compare. And this is something that we are trying to do. Is I was saying, I was talking about this mindset shift. Is really, I'm not producing the data now anymore, but I'm there to have a kind of step back, challenge, discuss the content produced by GenAI. And this is something that we have really to make sure that our consultants are ready, and we have to upskill them doing so. I had a discussion with one of my consultants. He was like, I don't want to do this project because I'm still 100% sure of the impact of GenAI on my day-to-day. And I was like, ooh, let's discuss. And we had this discussion around step back, how to make sure that you can challenge, discuss the data around GenAI. And that's, for me, the key point and the pivot within the organization to make sure that we can leverage properly GenAI.
Thank you very much, Anaïs. Thank you. You had something to add?
No, I just wanted to thank you.
Okay. So we have to close, but let me do a quick poll. How many of you expect that their job is going to change tremendously over the next year? So only among the next 12 months, the type of skills that you are using in your current job. That's quite. So we run a survey about that in it's called Hopes and Fears. You can check it. So 53% of the employees expect their job to change tremendously over the next 12 months. Thank you very much for your time, and welcome to talk around the coffee.